I'm Rosanne Ullman, and I'm reading Always Modern, Decade by Decade, a kind of history of Modern Salon Magazine and the beauty industry. This is the 100th anniversary, from 1924 to 2024, but this was written at the 75th anniversary in 1999. This is about the 1950s. Boom! Explosions in population and paychecks send business skyrocketing. After gathering momentum, the salon industry of the 1950s would bound into a record-breaking marathon, each year outpacing the previous one in everything from gross receipts to trade show attendance to association membership to the number of women who walked through professional doors. It was also the decade in which modern professional advanced education was born. The technical aspect of hair designing was changing. Older stylists, who had their pin curl winding techniques down to a science, were forced to learn new ways or be limited to serving patrons who preferred their tight curl 40s look to the looser waves of the 50s. Later in the decade, the invention of rollers offered an option for creating sleeker coiffes than curlers could produce. On the market were shears with combs built into one prong and perms that were more dependable than ever. Less toxic, more natural-looking color formulas offered total coverage as well as frosting, tipping, and streaking. But all these products and styling innovations required advanced training. Staffers had to learn the techniques before they could add any of it to the salon menu. While professionals in the 50s tended to drag their feet when it came to updating their business operations, they flocked to advanced training courses in hairstyling. They wanted to learn it all and found no lack of education available to them. Attendees also packed trade show classrooms as trade shows grew in number as well as in attendance, providing for the first time screens located throughout the showroom floor that captured the action on platform for all to see. A growing roster of universities added summer cosmetology courses, distributors conducted hands-on training, and some stylists offered themselves for hire as in-salon educators. The education focused on cutting, hairdressing, and chemical services. Skincare, nail care, and body services dropped off both in terms of public demand and professional interest. In contrast to earlier decades, perms no longer monopolized the profit picture, which greatly diminished seasonal fluctuations associated with the industry. Certainly, salons still did a substantial perm business, but color volume multiplied in rapid fashion for the same reason perms had. The home market widened public awareness, and bad dye jobs. Still, it was the wash and set client who provided the salon's bread and butter. She came in weekly and tended to be very loyal. And what attracted the new client to the salon often was a simple haircut. People everywhere. Demographics gained importance as the American population got shuffled and a whole new hand was dealt. The crucial factor was America's population growth. The full generation of war babies, aka baby boomers, had been born by the mid-50s, and they sent population figures off the charts all by themselves. In addition, immigration laws of the late 1940s and early 1950s brought in nearly 750,000 immigrants. Add to that the fact that people were living longer. Not only were there more people, but everyone who wanted to work had jobs, and most earned more than they ever had before. The matron, who at one time may have discontinued her salon visits by her 40s or 50s, now had money from pensions or Social Security and sought professional grooming to look lovely well into her 60s and even 70s. At the other end, the children and teenagers of the time formed the most populous generation the nation had ever seen. And many of these kids had their own money from allowance and jobs. The young woman in the middle likely worked for her living if she was unmarried, and even married women took employment in greater numbers. The wise salon owner catered to them all. The population shifted not only demographically, but geographically. Florida and California grew significantly, but the real story was that people just didn't stay put anymore. A job opportunity, a romance, or a whim might induce a relocation. This meant that salons regularly lost a certain number of clients and also had to market to clients moving into the area. The migration from city to suburbia was taking place at the same time. Many of the bustling urban neighborhoods where salons of the 40s found prosperity were becoming run down, and the new inhabitants were not as likely to have as much to spend on beauty services. While some clients who had left the city returned to their favorite salons, the travel and lack of adequate parking sent others looking for salons closer to their new suburban homes. 50s facelifts. Even salons that stayed where they were underwent complete renovations. New ideas in salon design followed models for efficiency and client accommodation. So many improvements and amenities were available: recessed lighting, built-in shelves for back bar storage and retail display, Venetian blinds, louvered shutters, stainless steel sinks, formica tabletops, fluted glass, rust-proof scissors, shampoo bowls with anti-splash lips, dryers with thermostat controls, and lift-up visors. In addition, tastes were evolving. Pinks, turquoise, black, and white took the place of seafoam green and beige, while in furniture, brass often replaced chrome. Mirrored walls, fabric awnings, and patterned wallpaper broke tradition with a stark clinical image of the salons of previous decades. Versatile plastic was used for upholstery and just about everything else, but hanging vines, potted plants, and other greenery combined with bamboo, wicker, and white wrought iron to soften the synthetic decor of the 50s with a casual outdoors ambiance. 50s fashion. Its growing wealth, entrepreneurial spirit, and native talent brought the United States to a new place of leadership in the fashion community. The runways of European capitals still held influence, but US women began to gauge it all within their own lifestyles. No longer could Paris dictate the hairstyles that would be worn on the streets of New York, much less LA. And when teens take over a country, casual and kicky hair and clothes are destined to follow. In America, this was a time for jitterbugging and wide felt poodle skirts, a time to get skinny and wear pedal pushers, a time you'd better find a way for your hair to look good while riding in a Chevy convertible. Elegant coiffs were for prom. Grown-ups had little need for elegance in an office all day or hanging laundry in the backyard. With the 50s came the first inkling of the client who needs a great haircut and perhaps perm that she can set in rollers nightly, brush out, and wear comfortably. Hairbands became fashionable and gave women a little help in self-styling. Curl lost no ground. It just loosened up and took on endless identifications, swirls and furls, dips and flips, poofs, puffs, peaks, scallops, scoops, flares, wisps, tendrils, and ringlets. As waves evolved into sleeker, more brushed-out versions, bouffant looks took center stage. Bangs ruled the decade, staying quite short and curling and waving in every imaginable direction, just like the rest of the hair. Picture First Lady Mamie Eisenhower, since it was her style that prompted many women to cut little bangs. Only at the decade's end did bangs begin to straighten and then push to the sides. Classy Audrey Hepburn provided direction for women who wore very short hair, and Elizabeth Taylor modeled beautiful hair with glamour. But the 1950s look was more typified in the girl-next-door persona of movie star Doris Day and television's leading ladies we now see on the Nickelodeon network: Lucille Ball in I Love Lucy, Jane Wyatt in Father Knows Best, and puppeteer Fran Allison on Kukla, Fran, and Ollie. The big loser was the hat industry. There always had been a competitive feeling between the industry that fixed hair and the one that covered it. By the time the 1950s ended, a champion was named. One prominent milliner noted, "We have been defeated by the hairdressers and must meet them on their terms." Decreed another, "We must have hats that show the coiffure. If not, there will be more hatlessness." Pillbox hats, veiled hats, and what was referred to as half hats were offered as a compromise. Hair would not hide fully beneath hats again. It was out, in color and in great shape for all to admire, thanks to a well-organized, flourishing salon industry. That was the 1950s. A lot happened. And if you remember the 1960s at all, you'll know that a lot happened then too. So join us for the next decade.